What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for April 28th, 2023, which also just so happened to be night one of the 2023 WWE Draft. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and enjoying your weekend so far. Certainly an eventful night on the Blue brand last night. Many major names being moved to Raw and SmackDown. A lot of superstars switching shows. For better or for worse, it was a very newsworthy night on SmackDown. Honestly, my first initial reaction to the draft moves being made, I was not a fan. A lot of the moves being made, a lot of confusing picks. I'm not really sure why they would move certain people where. They didn't break up any stables or tag teams, I will say that. That was interesting, and I appreciated that. For the first time in, if not ever, honestly, in a long time, even the very first draft they did in 2002, they were breaking up tag teams and groups even then. They so far have not done that. Not to say they will not do that. They very well could. And the additional rounds being made and the additional picks being made today on the SmackDown Lowdown, I'll be addressing that show and those picks in another video later today. So the SmackDown Lowdown video, my review of that will be up a little bit later today. My thoughts on the additional picks being made. It's like the supplemental draft from back in the day that the picks were being moved on WWE.com. That's basically what this is. For those eligible in the night one pool, that is. There were several people that were not moved to either Raw or picked rather by Raw or SmackDown on Friday night. They will hopefully be announced today. Maybe not everyone. There's pretty much every year for the last couple of years, there's been a number of names that were not named in the supplemental draft, so to speak, and they just kind of randomly get put somewhere else or they just get fucking released. In the 2021 draft, there were a lot of people that went undrafted that ended up just getting fired like a couple of weeks later. So hopefully that's not the case this year. And if anyone goes undrafted, it's not an ominous sign that they're being let go soon. But that being said, though, we had a lot of major names being moved, like I said. I just was not a fan of a lot of the moves being made here in this draft. Not to say that it wasn't like, obviously just because it wasn't what I wanted or expected, it's necessarily bad for that reason. But just with championships being moved and, again, not people being broken up, I didn't mind that we didn't get any breakups because, it never really made much sense why you would select, for example, from a storytelling standpoint. I know it's fucking pro wrestling. The real draft is going on, or went on in the last couple of days with the NFL draft. You can't really apply logic to these things, but it never made any sense to me. Why would you pick, for example, Woods and Kofi, but not Big E? If you're a general manager, wouldn't you just want the whole group if they're eligible as a group? That never really made any sense. So we haven't run into that issue yet. Certain people are made eligible together. Like, for example, Roman Reigns and Solo and Paul Heyman as the Bloodline were eligible together, but not with the Usos. So you might be thinking, oh, why didn't they pick the Usos too? Why wouldn't they just pick them as well? They weren't eligible tonight. They're eligible on Monday. And they may very well go to Raw. I won't offer any predictions for my night two picks of the draft. I kind of did my full roster breakdown, shake-up on WrestleRant Radio on Thursday. That would take too long anyway. But it was interesting. So I'm glad they didn't break up any tag teams or anything like that. That never really made any sense in years past. One major thing I have to acknowledge again that I've brought up before on hashtag, and I don't know if I mentioned this on WrestleRant Radio this week, there's no GMs making the picks. So for every round, and we're going to start with the moves being made here. I'll get to the SmackDown results, and the main event was really the most newsworthy thing, although the championship did not change hands, nor should it have. Undisputed WWE Tag Team Title main event, WrestleMania Rematch. We'll get to that soon enough. We'll talk about the draft stuff first. For every round, they had guest speakers or whatever for every round. So the first round was Triple H. The second round, I believe, was Michael P. I don't know why I said Paul Heyman. I think I'm looking at his name here in the draft thing, in the draft results. The second round was Michael P.S. Hayes and Rob Van Dam. Round 3 was Teddy Long and JBL. And then and Teddy Long was representing Raw, by the way, which made no sense. I know JBL also has ties to SmackDown as the longest reigning WWE champion in SmackDown history at one point. No longer, but at one point he was. Teddy Long, though, was the fucking GM of SmackDown for like a decade. How do you not have him make the SmackDown pick? Made no sense. But he was there. And then for the fourth round and the final round on TV, it was Road Dogg representing Raw and Shawn Michaels representing SmackDown. So let's get to the picks here. First pick went to SmackDown. So they went SmackDown, Raw. I don't know if on Monday, because it's going to be Raw. Raw will get the first pick on Monday. And again, who's making these picks? There's no fucking GMs. In the past, they would show war rooms with the network executives, who I don't believe were real executives. That was goofy and stupid. Like when they got all excited over landing Natalya a couple years ago, which was comical. That was very dumb. The format of these drafts are never really picture perfect. There's always issues with them. I always preferred like the shuffling, like the random generator. But logically, that would never make sense because they would always pick like the biggest stars in those. How come no like jobbers would ever get picked on TV? Because they were certainly eligible. It would always be very fucking random. At least here it makes a little bit more sense. But when you don't have GMs making the picks and you don't have authority figures, which at this point we should have, if they want us to take this brand split seriously, it makes no fucking sense. But anyway, so on Raw, I don't know if it's going to work out with Raw getting the first pick. Raw, SmackDown, Raw, which is how they've done it in the past. Because SmackDown is the shorter show than Raw. SmackDown is 2 hours. Raw is 3 hours. What's funny, though, is that by the end of this televised draft on Friday, SmackDown had more people than Raw did because they selected more groups and tag teams. Raw ended up with like 9 people. SmackDown ended up with like fucking 12 to 15. Anyway, first pick in the first round obviously had to be the undisputed WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns, along with Solo Sikoa and Paul Heyman, all landing on SmackDown. So Roman's been been property of SmackDown since 2019. That was not going to change in this draft, nor should it have. Logical pick. But you had to know if this was a real draft, which it's not, that Raw had to pick the second biggest name available, which was Cody Rhodes. I mean, I think, well, honestly, speaking about it now, I think you could have just swapped this pick and the next pick. The next pick went to SmackDown, and that was the Raw Women's Champion, Bianca Belair. And the last pick went to Raw, which was Becky Lynch. I was not a fan of this round. Roman landed exactly where he should have. I would have switched the next 3 people. Raw and SmackDown should have swapped Becky and Bianca. Now, I want Becky back on SmackDown. I think she just makes more sense being back on SmackDown. She's been on Raw for a while. She returned to SmackDown in the summer of 2021, but she was only there for like 2 or 3 months before they put her back on Raw. She really hasn't had a run on SmackDown in a few years. Better luck next year, I guess. I know that would disqualify Rollins from being in that World Championship tournament. So Becky being on Raw isn't the worst thing. Becky and Rollins have to move together. They're a married couple. All the couples have to stay together. So Becky going to Raw is fine. Rollins will obviously end up on Raw as well. They won't split them. And he can win the World Heavyweight Championship. Okay. Cody should have gone to SmackDown. Cody should have gone to the show that Roman Reigns was on. Now, here's the problem. Can they work their way around it and get Cody Rhodes in the same show as Roman eventually? Yes, but as I've said to several people on Twitter in the last day, I just think that completely defeats the purpose of having a fucking brand split. Now, the idea here, it's bittersweet, because it gets Cody off the same show as Roman, it keeps them apart, which is only a positive, and I can't completely shit on this until we see how the story plays out. Now listen, Cody Rhodes should have won the championship at WrestleMania. I will not shut the fuck up about it. He should have beaten Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 39 a month ago. There is no question in my mind about that even a month later. It would have solved a lot of problems and relieved a lot of headaches. But he didn't, and we have to move forward. I still think it will be Cody beating Roman for that belt. Maybe I'm just stupidly optimistic or just hopeful that he will and that he won't. I just don't know who else you save that spot for if it's not Cody Rhodes. It's not one of those things where it's like, I really want it to be Cody. I mean, I do. But the second part of that is, if it's not Cody, then who? And don't give me this bullshit, well, whoever beats Roman isn't in the company yet. You're going to keep the belt on Roman for another fucking 5 years until Kenny Omega comes in? Like, give me a break. If you don't have a name in mind at this point, 3 years in, and you're just keeping the belt on Roman for the sake of keeping the belt on Roman, that's bullshit. Cody should have already won it, and he should still win it. Even though it won't mean as much as it did at WrestleMania, as it would have at WrestleMania, it's still better than him not winning it at all. And no, Cody Rhodes winning the World Heavyweight Championship, before anyone says anything, is not finishing the story. That's a story ending to a different fucking book. No thanks. Cody Rhodes winning the consolation prize solves absolutely nothing. Does he finally become world champion? Yeah, but it sends the message you won a prize that the real star, Roman Reigns, is not holding. That's a whole other issue. Could they work their way around it? Yes. Could he win Money in the Bank? Could he win the Royal Rumble next year? Honestly, I'm leaning more towards the Rumble. And I know people don't like repeat winners and shit, but that's the only way you can really explain this. If you keep them apart only to come back to it at some point with Cody winning one of those two matches, unless they just move away from the brand split in the next fucking year, which is also very possible because they just give up on shit way too quickly. That's the norm for this company. That's fine. Money in the Bank, it just seems way too quick for him to go to Raw and then win a briefcase and then cash in on Roman. I mean, he would have to announce it. He can't just cash in randomly. That's not like the babyface Cody Rhodes way, I would say. Listen, it's pros and cons. Pros is, if he does that, you get the belt off of Roman quicker. I mean, there's that. I mean, Raw ended up with a lot of top-tier baby faces in this draft. Unless one of them goes heel. I don't see Cody going heel, nor should he. Rollins just turned babyface. He should not turn heel. They got Drew McIntyre as well. Spoiler alert, they got Drew McIntyre. That's 3 big baby faces. Unless SmackDown, and they likely will at this point, get Owens and Zayn, which I'm not in love with because it's like they've already faced Roman a million times. What are they really going to do when they drop those tag titles? I would rather they go to Raw. That's a lot of baby faces on Raw. Maybe Cody Rhodes is only on Raw for now until he moves back to SmackDown. That's possible. It's part of the story, I guess. Again, you could have just avoided all of this if you just won it at WrestleMania. None of the struggle, animosity, bullshit. But whatever. We'll see what happens there. The bigger issue I have with this round is Bianca Belair being on SmackDown. Now, we were saying as the draft was going on last night, maybe Io Sky will take it off of her. Maybe Io Sky will beat her for the belt and bring it back to Raw at Backlash. The problem with that, though, is that another spoiler alert here, Io is also on SmackDown now. All of Damage Control, which that was the one group I was hoping would get split up. They still hopefully will break up, but they won't be on separate shows, I don't think, unless one of them loses, like a loser leaves town match or whatever. With Bianca, this would have to mean, and we'll find out what happens with Rhea Ripley on Monday, unless they rebrand the titles, which, again, I can't complain completely about this stuff until we see how it shakes out. I just fucking... I'm dreading the idea already of them doing a dumb title belt swap as they have in years past. It's like passing candy to children. It's like kids just exchanging fucking Pokemon cards. Like in 2020, when the Profits and the New Day did it with the tag titles. 2021, Becky and Charlotte did it with the women's titles, and we all know how that turned out. That was a disaster. It's stupid. At least in 2021, not that it was acceptable, but both women had just won their respective championships, like a month or two earlier. Rhea Ripley just won the SmackDown Women's title, but what was refreshing about that to me is that she's never before been the SmackDown Women's champion. So if she just trades in that title for the Raw, for the Raw Women's title, it's not the end of the world. It is silly. For Bianca, though, it's a bigger issue because she's been the Raw Women's champion now for over a year. She's about to break the record set by Becky Lynch as the longest reigning Raw Women's champion ever. And now she's about to give up the fucking title as of like Monday or next week or whatever it is because of these dumb rules. Unless they rebrand the titles, which is still a possibility, I have not heard anything about that being the case, about that being the plan. Not that it won't happen, but I'm just not expecting it. Then we're probably getting another belt swap. They should have thought this shit through a couple of weeks ago when they were booking WrestleMania. If Asuka ends up on Raw, which I'm assuming she will at this point, she should have just beaten Bianca at WrestleMania and then she could have remained on Raw with the championship. Bianca's reign ending via a fucking draft after over a year is silly. It is silly and stupid, and I really hope they don't do that. Anyway, we got to move on here. Round 2. I spent a lot of time on round 1. Round 2, SmackDown landed the Street Profits, and keep that in mind too. There were a lot of big names that went in this draft. The fucking Street Profits. And maybe it was because we all knew that Montez Ford was ending up wherever his wife, Bianca Belair was. But I just thought that was, like, why would you pick? I love the Profits. Love the Profits. Why would you pick them over the next pick that went to Raw, the Intercontinental Champion, Gunther, Ludwig Kaiser, and Giovanni Vinci? It makes no sense. But at least they were all together, and Raw now gets the Intercontinental Championship for the first time in, I don't even know when. Raw's had the United States Championship for a long time. I'm trying to think. When was the last time the Intercontinental Championship would have been on SmackDown? Raw had maybe 2018? I think before WrestleMania 34, I think the Intercontinental Championship was on Raw. In 2017, the title switched with the United States Championship going to SmackDown and the Intercontinental title going to Raw. And then they swapped the brands again, which they didn't. That's the thing. Like, they don't have Gunther trading the title, nor should they. But if they don't do it for that title, then they shouldn't do it for the women's. It's fucking dumb. But I think it's been a good 5 years since the Intercontinental Championship was on a Raw superstar. So that's pretty cool. I assume Theory goes to SmackDown, or at least Bronson Reed maybe takes the belt and wins the United States. Or Bobby Lashley, which he probably shouldn't be United States champion again, but, it's a possibility. Speaking of SmackDown, they got Edge, and Raw got Matt Riddle. So, again, Profits to SmackDown, all of Imperium to Raw, Edge to SmackDown, which I like. It's the SmackDown, that's his home from back in the day, so I like that. And Riddle remains on Raw. So they're kind of putting all the people on Raw that Roman Reigns has already beat, and it has no reason to face again, which I like. It's like the non-Roman Reigns show. It's like AEW doing their draft based on this reported draft or brand split they might have coming up. SmackDown, or the Saturday show rather, gets Punk and all the people Punk doesn't have an issue with, and then Dynamite gets all the people that Punk does have an issue with or don't like Punk. That's kind of what they're basing this draft on, from what it feels like to me. They're putting all the people that have not faced Roman yet on SmackDown, which I'll get to, and all the people that he's already beaten on Raw, which is what I would do. It's just funny that everything still revolves around Roman Reigns. Round 3, SmackDown got Bobby Lashley as the first pick. First time back on the blue brand, I think, since 2006. Not to say he hasn't been on SmackDown or he hasn't had a match on SmackDown, but he has not been a SmackDown superstar, I don't think, in probably close to 20 years. Because he came back to the company 5 years ago after WrestleMania. He's been on Raw ever since. And then when he was last in the company in 2007, 2008, he was on Raw, and then before that he was on ECW. Before he was on ECW, he was on SmackDown. So that would have been late 2006 he was last on the show, which is a very long time. So I like that move. Hopefully Bray Wyatt, if Raw's getting so many baby faces and Roman hasn't beaten Bray yet, Bray's probably, when he comes back, is coming to SmackDown. So we probably will get that dumb fucking Bobby Bray feud, but hopefully they can forget about it and forget that it was even teased a couple of months ago. Raw got Drew McIntyre. I like that. He's away from the bloodline. He can win this new world championship at some point. Love it. Assuming he sticks around, which I'm thinking he will. SmackDown gets all of the OC, AJ Styles, Michin, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson. So a wild appearance, a rare appearance here from Gallows and Anderson, who have not been seen on the show for the most part. They've been in backstage segments, but they have not been in action on Raw since Styles got hurt 4 months ago. And Styles actually came back on this show. So I'll get to that momentarily. But I actually really like Styles being back on SmackDown with his group. Michin's still with him. I like that. Styles bleeds blue to me, so I like that pick a lot. And then Raw gets The Miz, who gives a shit. Round 4, SmackDown got Damage Control, still together. So again, there goes the idea of EO winning the Raw Women's Championship and bringing it to Raw. Maybe something happens. Maybe, I don't know. I don't fucking know. It just doesn't make any sense. Or I just rebrand the titles because it makes no sense anyway. For Raw, they got Shinsuke Nakamura. I talked about Bobby Lashley not having been on SmackDown in a long time. Shinsuke Nakamura is another one. Has not been on Raw ever, actually, as a Raw superstar. He was called up to the main roster in 2017. They haven't paid close attention, and put all that much effort into the brand split since then. But technically, he has been a SmackDown superstar since 2017. And he's had matches on Raw, obviously, but has never actually been a member of the Raw roster, until now. So I thought that was pretty cool. The last 2 picks made by Road Dogg and Shawn Michaels, as I mentioned earlier, were NXT picks. And we were told coming into the draft, select NXT superstars would be eligible. I don't know if that goes for today's SmackDown Lowdown draft. I'll have more on that in another video and on Twitter and stuff. And I'll have a whole recap article, by the way, going more in-depth with these picks over on WrestleRant.com sometime this weekend, probably tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. SmackDown got the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions, in the women's, all of the women's champions, really. SmackDown got Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, and Raw got the NXT Women's Champion, Indy Hartwell. First of all, very happy for Indy. I've been following her career for like a decade now, even well before she got to WWE. Super happy for her. I've never really given a shit about Isla Dawn. She's been decent lately in NXT. Alba Fire's awesome. I'm glad she's finally in the main roster. This also, it makes sense and it doesn't make sense. I've always complained, because we don't know, it said select NXT superstars are eligible. I mean, honestly, if we're being serious here, they probably should. I know Triple H's thing a couple of weeks ago, everyone's eligible, it's going to change the landscape of WWE. They just do this shit for shock factor. If everyone's eligible, realistically, Raw and SmackDown should take all of NXT's champions. If those are supposed to be the top talent on that show, they should take Carmelo Hayes. I mean, Braun Breaker's not a champion. They should take him too, realistically. They should take all the women's champions. They should take the NXT Tag Team Champions, which is Gallus. I mean, who gives a shit about Gallus, really? But who's the North American champion? Oh, Wesley. Wesley should be another one. He should be drafted immediately. The problem that you deal with there, though, is that it completely depletes all of NXT. So you have to put a rule in place, I think. You can't draft the NXT champions. You can draft Raw and SmackDown champions. They're already on the main roster. They should put a rule in place, because before they've never really drafted NXT champions until now. This might be the first draft where they've drafted an NXT champion to the main roster. Aside from, actually, I think Swerve Strickland actually was drafted as the North American champion in 2021, so I take that back. But then he quickly lost it. It just becomes more predictable when these people get called up and they're still champion. They're going to drop it on like the following Tuesday. Same thing here. The weird thing here with these three is that they're all new champions. I'm very happy Indy became the NXT Women's Champion at Stand and Deliver, but she had a championship defense on Tuesday and she got fucking hurt and they still kept the belt on her. So she just is going to vacate it. That to me is lazy. It's very lazy. Because again, you can't just draft some champions and then not the other. If Carmelo Hayes is not called up, I mean, he probably is not going to be, and I wouldn't do it right now anyway. He's ready, but like, there's still more to do with him as NXT champion. He just won the belt. You can't draft some champions and then not the other ones. I mean, by this logic, they should draft Wesley and Carmelo Hayes as well, and maybe they will. But I think that's dumb as well, because then they're either all dropping their championships at the same time, or they're vacating them, which is even worse, because they're not really putting anyone over. Indy, if she was going to get called up, and I kind of figured she would, because she's been due for a call-up forever now, she probably should have just lost it on Tuesday when she got hurt anyway. Hurt or not hurt, she should have lost it on Tuesday either to Tiffany or Roxanne Perez. I assume Roxanne Perez is also coming up, so I'm fine if she, whatever, but she's probably, if she didn't lose it, if she's not getting called up, and she still lost that match, that makes no sense to me. They probably should have just kept the belt on Roxanne if she's not getting called up yet, but maybe she is, who knows. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn also just won their championships 3 weeks ago at Stand and Deliver. I mean, again, why even bother putting the belts on them? It's comical because they showed their reactions. They were super happy. It's great for them. They were challenged to a match on Tuesday's NXT by none other than the only other real team NXT has in that division, Katana Chance and Kaden Carter. Are these fucking women ever getting called up? Probably not. If they're challenging Fire and Dawn to a tag team title match on Tuesday, then they're probably not getting called up either. And they've been in NXT forever now. I mean, just shit or get out the pot. Either let them go or call them up. And it's not one of those Aaliyah things either. I never really thought Aaliyah should have been called up. She's terrible. But with these women, with Katana Chance and Kaden Carter, they've really grown into a great team in the last couple of years. Why wouldn't you call them up? It just doesn't make any sense. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn will have their time. They honestly, I don't really care about the women's tag team division necessarily in NXT, but if you're going to put the belts on them, then they can have a little bit of a run. They haven't really had any run. They've been champions for a month. Again, it just doesn't make any sense. So we'll see what happens. I forgot to mention the rosters take effect, Triple H said, after Backlash on Saturday, May 6th. They also mentioned that trades are also possible, which, I mean, they haven't really done much of that in the past. They did do it with Ray and Corbin back in October, but they haven't done it since, and they didn't really do it prior to that point. So we'll see if that even sticks. And then I think they also mentioned, I might have missed this announcement, I think they also mentioned that this new World Heavyweight Championship, I think, tournament will feature Raw and SmackDown superstars. Now, I could be wrong on that. Maybe I didn't hear it, I just saw someone say it, and I saw people talking about it. So unless that's, I didn't see it myself on the show, I was getting pizza, so I missed that part. If that's true, and we were told by Michael Cole literally at the start of the show that the World Heavyweight Championship will be exclusive to Raw, then why the fuck would SmackDown superstars be fighting for it? Again, it makes no sense. This shit never makes any sense. I'm always excited for the draft, and I always get let down every year because a lot of their moves are just, it's shocking. Like, okay, but they just don't make any sense. If this was Triple H's first draft, so far he's not batting 1,000 here. Let's put it that way. Maybe they can recover and they can fix some of the shit, or they'll explain it. I can't complain completely until we see how this plays out on Monday. I'm not saying, let's wait 5 years. We got to see what happens on Monday. If they don't rebrand the titles, or they don't, I don't know. Like, you can't really explain the NXT stuff. They're either going to have to vacate their belts or lose them immediately. And neither option is really all that great. They should have never won the titles in the first place if that was going to be the case at the pay-per-view a month ago. It's stupid. Like, do you think Shawn Michaels would have put the belts on people he knew he was losing? He had Indy retained 3 days before this. It's silly. Let's get to the actual results of the show. Nothing really of note, but it's worth mentioning. Beyond the picks of the round 1 being announced by Triple H, we saw Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens exchange words with the Usos ahead of their tag team title main event. Pretty standard stuff here, good promo. I was honestly more intrigued by the stuff that we saw backstage with the Bloodline. No Roman Reigns, obviously, because why would he bother to show up? But we had Paul Heyman telling the Usos/Solo. The Usos thought that Heyman was talking to him. He kind of made a note of, tonight's the night, and Solo's wrapping his thumb. Kind of teasing that if the Usos lose, they're getting kicked out of the Bloodline. That was the implication here. The thing was that we never found out what Solo was going to be out there to do because he was thwarted in the main event by Matt Riddle. So they never really tied up that loose end, which is good. They're keeping it going. I like that. And the Usos should have lost, and they did. I'll get to that later on. The actual first match in the show is LA Knight taking on Butch, which they set up via the SmackDown Lowdown, and I knew that because I watch the show every week. One of 5 people who actually watch the SmackDown Lowdown. I review it, so you guys don't have to watch it. And for interactions like this, so he actually kind of, was making fun of Butch last week on the show. That set up this match. And LA Knight won. And I like Butch. I like Pete Dunne. They're probably getting drafted together are the Brawling Brutes. I would draft Butch to a different show than Sheamus and Ridge, or just at least Sheamus, so he can do his own thing and become Pete Dunne again. We saw the other day that Madcap Moss is Riddick Moss. Great. He's Riddick Moss again. Awesome. Now let's give Butch his name back, please. This Butch shit has run its course. Well beyond it. But LA Knight has been losing a lot. The only match I think he's won this year beyond one jobber win on the night on the SmackDown before the Rumble a couple of months ago was when he beat Rey Mysterio last month in the show via a fluke. I think he beat Rey Mysterio because of an interference, because of interference from Dominic or Judgment Day or whatever. So he really hasn't won much at all. He lost to Xavier Woods twice. He lost to Cody Rhodes. He lost a couple of multi-man matches. He has not had a lot of luck, but he did win here. And the crowd really liked him. He was over in front of this crowd. Let's get going with LA Knight, please. I was hoping he'd go to SmackDown. Honestly, coming out of this draft, seeing where certain people are right now, I'm hoping he goes to Raw. Raw has a lot of baby faces. They only really have one elite heel in Gunther right now, and he's the Intercontinental Champion. They need more main event heels, and LA Knight can be that guy. LA Knight can be a front runner, maybe not to win the World Championship, although I would love to see that. He ain't beaten Roman Reigns. He's not even going to sniff Roman Reigns. So you might as well put him on the other show. LA Knight would be a great top heel on Raw. He can feud with Seth. He can feud with Cody. He can feud with Drew. 3 fresh feuds right there, so I'm hoping he goes to Raw. With our luck, he'll end up on SmackDown. But I do think he should go to Raw. The other match in the show, the Street Profits beating Ricochet and Braun Strowman, and the LWO's Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde in a triple threat tag team match. No real reason for it. I mean, there were no stakes here. It was just a random tag team match, but it was a fun match. The crowd got into it. The LWO continued to fucking lose. They didn't take the pinfall loss here, but they lost again. They're still over with the LWO stuff, which is cool, but they just, they just never win. The Profits winning. They're on SmackDown now. We don't know where Ricochet and Braun are going. Honestly, I could see Ricochet, Braun, and LWO all going to Raw, especially if Owens and Zayn are going to SmackDown. So I would keep Ricochet and Braun on SmackDown personally. I don't know if I would run back Roman and Braun, but Ricochet and Roman, if you really built up Ricochet, then maybe. I know it's comical, but I don't know. I probably would keep them on SmackDown. That's just me. But yeah, the Profits win. Good match here. Enjoyed it. Vega beats Sonya Deville. Again, another match that was set up in the SmackDown Lowdown last week. I was shocked. The match of the show was actually significant last week. I was very surprised to see that. As someone who watches the show every single week, I was pleasantly surprised. The match was fine. Not really much of a match. Vega won kind of like in fluky fashion, and then Rhea came out and attempted to attack Vega. She got the better of her. Great DDT sell from Rhea Ripley per usual. And the whole message they were trying to send here was that Vega can upset Rhea in Puerto Rico and become champion. I like Vega. I think she's talented and she's great in her role. Definitely, it's very cool she's getting this opportunity. She should not be beating Rhea Ripley at this at this point. She should not be beating Rhea Ripley. So, I mean, I appreciate the attempt to kind of build up Vega. They kind of had to do that because it's too little too late. But it's better than nothing, so this was, it served its purpose. The OC was out next. All of the OC, as I mentioned earlier. AJ Styles back on the show. I was pleasantly surprised to see him on the show. I guess there were rumors from Fightful earlier in the evening that Styles was backstage on SmackDown. I did not see that. I purposely avoided all these spoilers from the draft before the show aired, so I was very surprised to see Styles on the show, and I was happy to see him. He didn't get a chance to really say anything. He did speak, but only after being interrupted by the Viking Raiders. The crowd went mild. No one gives a shit about the Raiders in Valhalla. I like the act, but no one cares. AJ let the trio of Michin, and again, she was with them. She was with the OC here, which is cool. Gallows and Anderson go after the Raiders and Valhalla. And I'm thinking, okay, if he didn't really get physically involved, he may not be cleared yet after Raw. He just sat on the top rope. And then he actually ended up hitting a phenomenal forearm on one of them. So I don't think it was Valhalla. I think it was one of the guys, obviously. So he probably is cleared. He's probably been cleared for a little bit now, but they were waiting until the draft to bring him back. That's great. Very happy to see that. AJ has been sorely missed on these shows. Gallows and Anderson, they're stoked to have him back because they haven't been on the show at all. They've just been sitting and catering, collecting a free paycheck. I'm sure they love that. I like AJ being on SmackDown a lot along with Bobby because those are two new opponents for Roman Reigns to face at some point. They will lose to Roman Reigns, but we haven't seen Roman and AJ one-on-one since 2016. That's 7 fucking years ago. We're long overdue for another AJ and Roman match, so I like that a lot. And then Bobby and Roman, again, we haven't seen that match one-on-one since 2018. I think the last time they had a match, Roman won, but Bobby beat Roman on pay-per-view back at Extreme Rules in 2018. And Roman avenged the loss on Raw soon after, but I don't think we ever had a rubber match. They had a triple threat match on Raw with Big E in late 2021 that Roman won, I think, by pinning Bobby Lashley. But one-on-one, they have not had a rematch yet, and hopefully we do get that at some point this year, now that they're on the same show. The main event, as they mentioned, the undisputed WWE Tag Team titles on the line. Owens and Zayn successfully retaining against the Usos. Another top-tier match from these two teams. Obviously, it did not reach the same heights as their WrestleMania main event, but still a very strong, entertaining main event. Great near falls, making you think maybe they will drop the championships here. They did not. Like I said earlier, Solo Sikoa attempted to interfere. We don't know what he was going to do, whether he was going to help Sami and Owens win, or attack the Usos if they lost. We still don't know, because Riddle went after Solo. And that was it. So the whole story they're teasing now is that now Zayn and Owens have held on to the tag team titles. What does this mean for the Usos? I honestly think we might see the Usos get drafted to Raw, and they will not be in the same show as Roman Reigns. I think that is very possible. And I'm not even upset over that. I would keep the whole group together. I mean, you can't really do follow-up with those two, with the Usos and Roman if they're not on the same show. I mean, unless you just want to completely fucking demean the brand split within weeks of doing it, but, whatever. Within weeks of doing the draft. I would keep them on the same show, but I think it's very possible that Roman orchestrates them getting moved to Raw, so he doesn't have to deal with them. Now that he has no use for them, he may have them moved to Raw, because he's with Solo. That's all he really needs at this point. I wouldn't be upset at that, but we'll see how it plays out. That was SmackDown. Those were the results. So those were the draft results as well, the draft recap. I'll have more of an in-depth analysis of all the picks and whatnot, including those made on the SmackDown Lowdown today, which are already up on the show. I'll get to those in another video soon, so bear with me. But, yeah, that was SmackDown in a nutshell, as I mentioned, and it was quite the eventful show. Honestly, I was not overly optimistic coming out of night one of the draft. I really would not have made certain moves, or at least done a better job of explaining other moves. Just kind of odd why they made certain superstars move and not other ones. It's just, like, we have Bayley and Bianca on the same show again. Like, is that feud ever going to fucking end? Like, come on. But still, we'll see how it plays out on Monday, how it plays out today on the SmackDown Lowdown, how it plays out on Raw Talk on Tuesday, and we'll have a better idea as far as what this draft will ensue, by this time next week. And we'll talk all about it next week here on the SmackDown audio review. I will likely do a SmackDown audio review. I don't typically do it the weekend of big pay-per-views. I haven't done one the weekend of a pay-per-view in fucking, I don't know when the last time would have been, because I've either been at the show, and if I haven't been to the show, it would have been like a noon show in Saudi Arabia. And I don't do it those weekends because the pay-per-views are too early on Saturdays, usually when I record. So I haven't done a SmackDown audio review the weekend of a pay-per-view in a very long time. I'll probably do it next weekend if Backlash is that night, which I think it is on Saturday. I'll probably do it before then. Bad Bunny will be on the show. We're getting Karrion Kross and Shinsuke Nakamura and a few other matches, so we'll see how it shakes out, and I'll have full thoughts then. Thank you guys for checking out my full SmackDown audio review and recap for Night 1 of the WWE Draft. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Also, hit the bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up. Have a great rest of your weekend. Stay tuned for the SmackDown Lowdown review coming at some point, hopefully a little bit later today with my full review of all the additional draft picks made on that show. Have a great one, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.